"Dude, are you serious? A Filipino asking to change my BMW's tire?" Marcus Thompson laughed loudly, shaking the car keys imported in front of his friends. "Look at him, bro. Looks like he slept on the street." The premium Shell post of gasoline on the Pacific Coast Highway in Malibu was bustling that Friday afternoon. Rico Santos, 45, was stopped at the entrance with a Filipino accent, asking for an opportunity that everyone considered a bad joke. At 45, he never imagined that his life of glory on the tracks would become to begging for work in exchange for food. "Please, sir," Richley insisted politely, ignoring the laughter of the three American mechanics. "I just need something to eat. I can change your tire, that is boring." Tyler, the post supervisor, approached, cleaning his hands on the cloth. "Listen here, man. This is not the poor soup. BMW X6 is not a supermarket cart that anyone moves." His voice carried the typical contempt of those who never had to fight for anything in life. But Rich had heard the specific noise of the car when Marcus tried to get out of the spot. It was not just the flat tire. There was something in the engine, an irregular vibration, the characteristic smell that came from the exhaust. Everything told a story that his trained ears knew better than any manual. Years of experience had sharpened their senses in a way that these weekend mechanics would never understand. "Your tire is not the only problem," Rico said calmly, pointing to the hood. "Engine cushion is loose, so it's vibrating so much, and by the smell, the fuel filter also needs to be changed." The silence that was made at the post was broken by a collective laugh. Jake, the youngest mechanic, started filming with his cell phone. "Man, this will give an epic TikTok. Immigrant Filipino diagnosing BMW better than mechanic formed." Marcus crossed his arms, clearly annoyed. "Mano, you couldn't find it in 2 weeks, and now this guy comes here saying he knows the problem just hearing? What clowning is this?" 2 weeks? Rich frowned at the eyebrows, genuinely surprised. "Haven't you tested the engine cushions?" "Of course we tested everything." Tyler lied blatantly, knowing that they had actually focused only on the most obvious problems. The truth was that he himself would not even know where to begin to diagnose something so specific. Rico watched the parked silver BMW, his eyes traveling every detail with a surgical accuracy that none of them noticed. There was something in his posture, in the way he analyzed the vehicle, which suggested years of experience with much more complex and powerful machines than anyone there could imagine. "If I fix it," Rico said simply, "give me a sandwich. Anything. I'm just hungry." The proposal was so absurd that Marcus almost choked. "A sandwich? Man, if you really solve what these professionals haven't got in 2 weeks, I pay you $100 and still shoot everything. And I post to TikTok," Jake added, still laughing. "It will be viral. Filipino fixes BMW that American can't." Rico just nodded, his hands already moving toward the hood of the car. For a brief moment, when his fingers touched the metal, something changed in his posture. It was no longer the desperate immigrant asking for food. It was someone who knew engines like a conductor knows a symphony, as a surgeon knows anatomy. Tyler was about to make another joke when he noticed something strange. The way Rico opened the hood, as his eyes immediately found the right components, as his hands moved with a confidence that did not match his humble appearance. "Jake," Tyler whispered, "stop shooting a second." But Jake was mesmerized by the subtle transformation he witnessed. Rico had taken a key to the bench and started working with precise, almost surgical movements, as if that engine were family territory. Marcus approached, his arrogance giving way to growing curiosity. "How did you know where the sensor was without even looking at the manual?" Rico did not respond immediately, focused on work. When he finally raised his eyes, there was an intensity in them that made all Gifts realize that they could have completely underestimated that man. "I worked with engines all my life," he said simply, continuing the repair. What none of them knew was that Rico Santos was not just another Filipino immigrant looking for work on the streets of Los Angeles. He had been a legend in the Philippines, Rally World champion, Formula One professional pilot, owner of one of Manila's most respected workshops, until a family tragedy brought him to the United States in search of a fresh start that became a devastating fall. While working in silence with all the fixed eyes on him, Rich carried secrets that explained not otherwise his exceptional technical knowledge, but also the unshakable calm of those who had already faced much greater challenges than the contempt of 3 arrogant American mechanics. There, in the face of all the eyes of contempt, he remained firm as one who holds too powerful secret to be revealed before the right time. Every movement of his hands told a story that these men could not read, but would soon become impossible to ignore. If this story of prejudice and hidden talent aroused your curiosity, be sure to subscribe to the channel to find out how a simple request for food would become the most humiliating lesson these men would never receive. 15 minutes later, Rico had removed the defective sensor and installed a new that Fernando from the workshop next door lent. BMW was around it as new, smooth and powerful. "This is impossible," Marcus murmured. connecting and turning off the engine several times. You stayed 2 weeks in this and does it solve in 15 minutes? Tyler was red with anger and shame. It was luck. Anyone could have thought of the oxygen sensor first. Anyone? Rico asked calmly, cleaning his hands on an old cloth. So, why didn't you think? Jake kept filming, but now with less fun and more fascination. The video was already getting very different from what he had planned to post. Marcus took a $100 note out of his wallet, but Rich his head swing. We combined a sandwich. Just that. Dude, you just did what a premium workshop failed. Accept the money. I don't need to, Rich insisted. Word is word. Tyler approached, clearly annoyed that he was surpassed by an disqualified immigrant. Okay, you were lucky this time, but any more complex problem you wouldn't solve. More complex like what? Rico asked, genuinely curiously. Like that Porsche there? Tyler pointed to a red sports car at the bottom of the workshop. 3 weeks standing. Engine makes a strange noise, but no one can identify what it is. Not even the dealership technician. Rico walked to Porsche 911, his hands touching the hood lightly. May I take a look at it? Have you become a Porsche expert too? Jake laughed, but there was less confidence in his voice. Marcus joined the group. Dude, if you solve this too, I give you $500. This Porsche is mine. I bought used and found that there is a problem. Rico opened the hood and immediately frowned. Not for the problem, which identified in seconds for the characteristic sound, but from what he saw in the engine. Specific modifications, custom adjustments, tool marks I knew very well. Where did you buy this car? Rico asked, his voice changing subtly. From a guy in the Philippines. He said he was from some famous pilot there. Why? Rico felt his chest squeeze. That Porsche had been his. The same one that had piloted in dozens of races in Manila. The same one he had sold by a fraction of the real value when he had to leave everything behind and come to the United States after the tragedy that destroyed his family. Modifications in the injection system, the suspension lowered specifically, even a small brand that had made in the engine after an especially important victory. Everything was there, like ghosts of a life he thought he left completely in the past. The problem is at the high-pressure pump, Rico said, forcing his voice to stay firm. It has been modified for running. It needs special fuel and specific maintenance. With ordinary gasoline, failure after a few hours. Tyler crossed his arms. And how do you know all this? Rich hesitated. How to explain that you knew why you had personally made each of those modifications? What had tested that bomb in more than 50 races? What did you know each screw of that engine because it was the one who had built it? I've seen similar modifications. Lied. Marcus connected the engine and the irregular sound confirmed exactly what Rich had said. You're right again. How can you diagnose these problems so fast? Rico didn't answer, lost in memories that would rather keep buried. He remembered the night races in Manila, the adrenaline of accelerating narrow streets from the time when he was known as the Ghost, the one who appeared out of nowhere and won impossible races. He also remembered the accident, the wrong police chase, the explosion that took his younger sister, who had insisted on going along in that fatal race. Rich, Marcus called, taking him out of the dark thoughts. Are you well? I am, lied again, closing Porsche's hood harder than necessary. Jake kept his cell phone filming, finally realizing that there was something much deeper happening there. Dude, who are you really? Rico looked at the 3 men who treated him like garbage, and now watched him with a mixture of reluctant respect and growing curiosity. They had no idea that they were in the presence of someone who was once considered the best street pilot of the Philippines. I'm someone who had a different life, Rico said simply, and now you just want a second chance. Tyler was clearly uncomfortable with the turnaround of events. His premium workshop had been overcome twice by a man he judged as an incompetent. Okay, you understand cars, but that doesn't change the fact that you appeared here asking for food. Where do you work? Where do you live? The question reached Rich as a punch. The truth was that I slept in a shelter for immigrants, survived with construction work and washing dishes in a Filipino restaurant in the early hours. All his experience and knowledge had not been enough to get a decent job in a country that saw his appearance and accent only. Work where they leave me, Rico answered with dignity. And I live where I can. Marcus observed the interaction in silence, clearly bothered by Tyler's behavior. Rich, can I ask you a question? Do you want a job? The silence that was made in the workshop was tense. Tyler opened his mouth to protest, but Marcus cut him off. My company has a fleet of executive cars. We always need good mechanics, and from what I saw here today, you are better than many certified professionals I know. Rico felt an emotion he had not experienced for years. Hope. But Tyler was not willing to accept that situation. For him, social hierarchy needed to be maintained. No matter how much rich he knew, he was still just a Philippine immigrant who didn't deserve to be there. Each new humiliation only strengthened something within him that his oppressors could not see, a silent force being fed by his own injustice they tried to impose, while Rich guarding secrets that would soon transform that contempt into the most expensive lesson that these men would never receive. "Marcus, are you crazy? Will you hire a guy who don't even know where it came from?" Tyler protested, his voice loaded with desperation disguised as indignation. "What if he steals something? What if it's illegal?" The racist accusation was like a slap in the face of all present. Jake bowed his eyes, embarrassed. Marcus was visibly annoyed. Rich, however, just smiled sadly. He had heard worse accusations, facing more cruel prejudices, but each word confirmed something that was silently planning since he set foot at that post. Maybe it was time to show those people not just what you knew about engines, but who it really was. And especially what happened when someone completely underestimated a man who had already lost everything once and had nothing more to lose. "Tyler," Marcus said coldly, "this is unacceptable. Rich has documents, work, all regularized. You are being racist." Jake completed softly, still filming but now with an uncomfortable expression. Tyler realized that he had crossed a dangerous line, especially being filmed. "That's not it. I'm just being cautious. You don't know this guy." Rico kept his cell phone in his pocket slowly, his hands moving with a deliberate calm that made Marcus realize that he was about to witness something significant. "Tyler," Rico said, his voice taking a different tone, lower, more controlled, more dangerous. "Can I show you something?" Tyler crossed his arms. "What now? Will you teach me more mechanical tricks?" Rico took his cell phone out of his pocket and opened YouTube. On the screen appeared a video with over 5 million views. "The Ghost wins World Rally Championship, Manila 2019. A blue Subaru accelerates by impossible mountain roads, diverting obstacles with superhuman reflexes, piloted by someone with skills that challenge the laws of physics." "This guy is insane," Jake commented, approaching to see. "Who can drive like this?" Rico increased the volume. The video shows the pilot out of the car after the victory, taking off his helmet and revealing a younger but unmistakably familiar face. The silence that was made was absolute. Marcus took the cell phone, paused the video at the exact moment when the pilot's face is clear, and looked at Rico. "It can't be. Rico Santos, the Ghost," Rico said simply. "World Rally champion for 3 consecutive years, urban circuit speed record holder in the Philippines." Tyler was gaping. Jake compulsively filmed everyone's reaction. "You're a legend," Marcus murmured. "Dude, I saw you run. There's your YouTube videos with millions of views. You're considered one of the best street riders in the world." Rico waved, but there was sadness in his eyes. That was before. He stopped, unable to finish the sentence. The memories of the accident that took his sister were still very open. Tyler was trying to process the information. The immigrant you disqualified that had humiliated was actually an international celebrity of motorsport. "So why are you here?" Tyler asked, his arrogance giving way to genuine curiosity. "Why aren't you running? Why are you asking for work at gas station?" Rico kept the cell phone. "Because some races cost more than trophies can pay." Marcus understood that there was a tragic story behind those words and decided not to press. Instead, he had an idea. "Rich, forget the indication for other companies. I have a better proposal." He took the keys from Ferrari Vermiglia, parked from the workshop. "My partners are coming here today to see some cars. One of them has a Ferrari with a problem that no one can solve. If you can diagnose and fix in front of them, they will want to hire you at the time," Jake added, excited to film more viral content. "What if he can't solve?" Tyler asked maliciously. "What if it's all a lie?" Rico looked straight into Tyler's eyes. "If I can't solve, I'm leaving and never back here." "What if you get it?" Marcus asked. Rico smiled, and for the first time since he had reached that country, his eyes shone with the confidence of the champion that had once been. "If I can, you will find that underestimating people by appearance is the most expensive mistake someone can make." Tyler didn't like the challenging tone, but couldn't retreat now. "Okay, I accept the bet. But when you fail, I want you to admit in front of everyone that is just a scam." Rico reached out, combined. As they squeezed their hands, Richley observed Tyler carefully. There was something in that man's stance, in the way he looked at the expensive cars, in the envy poorly disguised when he talked to Marcus, who Rich recognized very well. Tyler was not just a prejudiced mechanic. He was someone frustrated with his own mediocrity, someone who used racism to mask his professional insecurity. And people like that always made the same mistake. They thought that humiliating others made them superior. Rico had learned from Manila's tracks that the most dangerous opponents were not the most skilled, but the most desperate, and Tyler was clearly desperate to prove something. What Tyler did not know was that Rico had spent years facing pilots who bet their lives in racing. An insecure mechanic trying to sabotage his reputation would be just a warm-up. But Rico also knew that true revenge would not just fix a car. It would be to show everyone, including Marcus's partners, exactly what happened when genuine talent found real opportunity. And when Tyler was time to find out who was really dealing with, it would be too late for anything beyond regretting the wrong man, at the wrong time, as spectacularly as possible. 2 hours later, a red F8 Tribute Ferrari parked in front of the Shell post. From the car descended 2 men of expensive suits, David Chen, Marcus's majority partner, and Jonathan Rodriguez, owner of one of the largest dealership networks on the West Coast. "Is this Ferrari with problem?" Marcus asked, clearly impressed by the $400,000 vehicle. "Exactly," David replied, frustrated. "I bought from a collector in the Philippines. 720 horsepower V8 turbo engine, but there is a defect no one can identify. Ferrari's own technician said it is inconsistency in power delivery, but they can't solve." Tyler approached, rubbing his hands. That was his chance to shine in front of the bosses and to humiliate Richly Rich. "I can take a look, Mr. Chen. I have experience with high-performance cars." "In fact," Marcus interrupted, "I want you to know someone first." "Critch can come here." Rico approached calmly, his hands still dirty with grease. Jonathan and David exchanged suspicious looks to see their simple appearance. "Gentlemen, this is Rich Santos. He was able to diagnose and solve problems that our team failed in weeks." Tyler laughed nervously. "Marcus, no need to overdo it. There were 2 basic repairs." "Basic?" David frowned. "Marcus told me that you couldn't solve a 7 Series BMW for 2 weeks. The tension in the air was palpable. Tyler realized that his competence was being questioned in front of the true owners of money. Rico approached Ferrari and immediately his heart fired. It wasn't just the model. It was specifically the F8 chassis 274, the same Ferrari that had piloted at the World Circuit World Championship in 2020, the same one that had been modified under its supervision, with specific adjustments that only he knew. "Can I start the engine?" Rico asked David. Of course. When Rico turned the ignition, the sound that came out of the engine told a story that only he could understand completely. It wasn't just a mechanical problem. Someone had tried to reverse their original modifications and done it incorrectly. "The electronic management system is configured for the original modifications," Rico said, turning off the engine. "But someone reinstalled factory components without recalling ECU." David gaped. "How do you know about modifications? Documentation did not mention any of this." Rich hesitated. He could not explain that he knew why he was the one who supervised each modification of that specific car. "For engine sound and throttle response, it is a typical inconsistency of when hardware and software are not synchronized." Tyler was not willing to accept that. "Anyone can talk about ECU and modifications. What matters is solving." "You're right," Rico agreed. "Mr. Chen, can I do a quick test to confirm?" David waved positively. Rico connected a scanner to Ferrari and sailed the menus with a familiarity that made everyone intrigued. In a few minutes, he found exactly what he was looking for. "Here it is," showed the scanner screen. "ECU programmed for high-performance injectors, but the installed are factory, so power delivery is inconsistent." Jonathan approached the screen. "Impressive. How did you know where to look?" "Experience," Rico answered simply. Tyler could no longer contain himself. Seeing Rich being praised by the bosses was destroying his ego. "Okay, he identified the problem, but solving is something else. Let's see if you can do more than diagnosis." David looked at Tyler with a cold expression. "Mr. Tyler Martinez, head of the mechanics," he introduced himself proudly. "Mr. Martinez, as far as I understand, you spent 2 weeks with a BMW and could not solve." Rico resolved in 15 minutes. Maybe it is better to observe and learn. Tyler's public humiliation in front of the bosses was brutal. His face turned red with anger and shame. Rico began working at Ferrari, reconfiguring ECU with precision that hypnotized the observers. His hands moved through the digital menus as if he knew each memory parameter. "Unbelievable," Jonathan murmured to David. "He's recalibrating everything without even consulting manual." What they didn't know was that Rich did not need manual because it was he who had created those specific parameters 3 years ago, when Ferrari was still his. After 30 minutes of intense work, Rico finished reprogramming. "Ready? They can test." David turned on the engine and the sound that came out was completely different. Soft, powerful, perfect. He stepped on the accelerator and the answer was instantaneous and brutal. "My God," he murmured. "I've never seen this Ferrari walk like this." Rico smiled sadly. Of course not. No one had piloted that Ferrari with the right settings since he had done so, before losing everything and coming to the United States. Jonathan took off his cell phone and started filming. "I need to document this. Rich, where did you learn to work with such advanced systems?" In the Philippines, Rico answered evasively. Tyler, desperate to recover some credibility, made the error that Rich was waiting. I bet it was in some pirate workshop there. You Philippines are known to make imported car gambiara. The racist comment exploded in the air like a bomb. David and Jonathan were visibly uncomfortable. Marcus closed his face. Rich, however, remained calm. The time had come. Tyler, he said softly, can I show you where I really learned? Before Tyler could answer, Rico took his cell phone and opened a specific video on YouTube. On the screen appeared a red F8, exactly the same as the workshop. Accelerating the streets of Manila with a superhuman skill. Ferrari F8 World Circuit World Championship Manila, 2020, Rico the Ghost Santos. He read the title aloud. The silence that was made was absolute. David took the cell phone, compared the video car with his Ferrari, and his hand began to tremble. And, can't it be? Is it the same Ferrari? Yes, Rico confirmed. Chassis, 274. It was mine. Jonathan was watching the video, watching Rich roll that same Ferrari with impossible accuracy. Are you the legendary pilot of the Philippines? Era, Rich corrected. Tyler was in full shock. For 2 days he had treated like rubbish someone who was considered one of the best street riders in the world. David looked at Rico with an expression of absolute reverence. Mr. Santos, I bought your car. Your victories in this Ferrari are legendary. Why? Why are you here? Rico looked at Ferrari that one day had been his home, his passion, his identity, because sometimes we lose everything to gain something more important. While the truth emerged as a smelling volcano lava, Tyler realized that he had not only underestimated a qualified mechanic, he had moved by a living legend, and now it would have to face the consequences of its arrogance in the face of the owners of the company that employed it. Marcus finally understood the magnitude of what he was witnessing. Rich, you're not just an exceptional mechanic, you're a living legend. Tyler, completely humiliated and unaware where to hide, tried a desperate last card. Okay, he's famous, but that doesn't change the fact that he appeared here asking for food like any. You are fired, David interrupted him, his voice loaded with authority. The statement fell like lightning. Tyler paled. Mr. Chen, you spent 2 days humiliating a man whose talent is 1,000 times superior to yours. Worse, did it with racist comments that this company does not tolerate. Jonathan turned to Rich. Mr. Santos, would you like to consider a proposal? I have luxury car dealers in 3 states. I need someone with your knowledge to lead my technical department. Marcus added quickly, and I would like to offer you society to expand Elite Motors. Rico looked at Tyler, who was being escorted by the security guards, completely ruined. Then he looked at Ferrari, who had once been his greatest achievement, and now represented his greatest redemption. I accept to work with you, I said finally, but with a condition. Anything, David answered immediately. I want to create a training program for young mechanics, regardless of origin or social class. Talent does not know prejudice. Ferrari F8 red smoothly spotted in the background, as if approving the decision. Rico Santos, Manila's ghost, had finally found her new running track, and this time, the victory would be much larger than any trophy that had already won. 6 months after that day that changed everything, Rico Santos was standing in front of a 3,000 square meter complex in Burbank. The gold plate at the entrance shone under the Californian sun. Santos Performance Center, where legends are born. The complex housed 3 distinct operations: a workshop specializing in high-performance cars, a free technical school for needy communities, and an emerging pilot training center, all funded by society with Marcus and millionaire contracts with Jonathan dealers. Rich, Marcus approached carrying a tablet. The third quarter figures arrived. The workshop earned $2.8 million, and we have 6 months waiting list for service. Rico smiled, observing a group of young Latinos and Asians working on engines under the supervision of experienced mechanics. What about the boys at the technical school? All 50 graduates from the first class got a job. 3 were hired by McLaren herself, and 2 by Ferrari. David Chen has been driving a blue Bugatti Veyron, accompanied by a Netflix filming team. Rich, ready to record the last episode of the documentary? The documentary, The Ghost Returns, had become a global phenomenon, telling the story of Rico from the streets of Manila to becoming one of the most respected mechanics in the United States. Before we start, Rico said to the director, I want to show a special thing. He led them to a special section of the workshop where his former Ferrari F8 red was exposed, the same one he had fixed that fateful day at the Shell post. David had insisted on selling her back to Rich for the symbolic price of $1. This Ferrari represents more than a car, Rico explained to the cameras. It's proof that our identity is not what we lose, but what we choose to build after the loss. The director asked some questions about his journey, but Rico was distracted by a movement in the parking lot. A middle-aged man came down from an old Honda Civic, nervously looking around. It was Tyler Martinez. Rico apologized with the filming team and walked to the parking lot. Tyler was stopped at the entrance, clearly uncomfortable, wearing a beaten mechanic jumpsuit from a neighborhood workshop. "Tyler," Richly greeted calmly. Tyler choked on the words. He had lost 15 pounds, looked 10 years older, and his eyes carried the weight of someone who had lost everything for his own arrogance and prejudice. Tyler had been fired not only from Elite Motors, but placed on the black list of the entire industry. No one wanted to hire the mechanic who had treated a living legend like garbage. Now it survived by doing minor repairs in a periphery workshop, gaining a tenth of what it used to earn. "I heard that you opened this place." Tyler has managed to speak with difficulty, and has a training program. Rico studied the man who had tried to humiliate him 6 months ago. "Do you want to sign up for the program?" Tyler looked down. "I know I don't deserve it. I know how I treated you, but I lost everything. My house, my car, my reputation. Family itself no longer talks to me after the video went viral." Rico remembered the video Jake had posted showing all the racist comments of Tyler and his subsequent humiliation. It had accumulated 50 million views and became a case of study of the consequences of prejudice in the workplace. "Tyler," Rico said softly, "the program is for 16 to 25 years of needy communities." Hope in Tyler's eyes was completely extinguished. "But," Rico continued, "I'm opening a special professional rehab program for experienced mechanics who want to start over." Tyler lifted his unbelieving eyes. "Would you accept me after everything I did?" Rico looked at the red Ferrari through the workshop window, then returned to Tyler. "Everyone deserves a second chance. The question is whether you are willing to deserve it." Tyler fell to his knees on his asphalt, crying, "Rich, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I was an arrogant and prejudiced idiot. You're 1,000 times the man I will never be." Rico helped Tyler get up. "Get up, man. Dignity is the first thing you will learn here." Marcus approached, having witnessed the whole scene. "Rich, are you sure?" "Absolute," Rico answered. "The best revenge is not to destroy who hurt you, Marcus. It's giving them a chance to become better people." 3 months later, Tyler had become one of the most dedicated students of the rehabilitation program. He worked 12 hours a day, studied at night, and had become an example of how prejudice can be healed through exposure to diversity and genuine humility. Rico was in his office reviewing Santos Performance Center's expansion plans when he received an unexpected call. "Mr. Santos, here is from the White House. The president would like to invite him to receive the Presidential Medal of Freedom for his work in social inclusion and community development." Rico hung up the phone and looked out the window to the complex he had created. Dozens of young people of all ethnic groups worked side by side, learning not only mechanics, but dignity, respect, and that talent does not know color or social class. Tyler was down, patiently teaching a group of Latin teenagers like calibrating an engine, treating each one with the respect he had denied Rich on that first day. Jake had become the center's official documentary filmmaker, creating inspirational content that was used in schools across the country to combat prejudice. Marcus had expanded Elite Motors to a national network, always with the principle that competence matters more than appearance. And Rich had finally found something bigger than any trophy or individual recognition. He had discovered that the real victory was not to be better than their enemies, but to help them become better people. That night, before going home, Rico stopped in front of Ferrari F8 Red one last time. On the sign by the car was written, "Dedicated to all who have already been judged by appearance instead of character. Your stories matters, your dreams are valid, and your revenge will be to live an extraordinary life." Rico Santos had proved that when someone tries to destroy you by prejudice, the best answer is not to retaliate with hatred, but to build something so great and positive that it forces even their enemies to recognize their greatness. And so, the Filipino who was once humiliated for asking for food in exchange for work has become a living proof that the only revenge that is worthwhile is the one that transforms not only his own life, but the world around him. The Ferrari F8 Red ronrona softly at the bottom of the workshop, as if approving every decision its former owner had made. Rico Santos, Manila's ghost, had finally found her definitive running track, the human heart. If this story of transformation and overcoming has inspired you, just as it inspired those who lived it, subscribe to the channel to discover more stories that prove that the best revenge is always that of success, built with dignity and purpose.